In the United States, it's like, hey, bring your talents, bring your ideas, bring your game, bring your work ethic, and you could do whatever you want here. And that is why you look at the self-made millionaires and billionaires in this country. I mean, you have people coming, we could throw around so many names, but literally growing up in poverty and they become billionaires. I don't think Americans understand that. They take it for granted.
Tell us more about you, your story, and how you achieved freedom and what freedom means to you.
That's a great question. So I'm originally from South Africa, and I grew up during a very interesting time in South Africa's history. And as a young man too, we had a transition of governments, and I was 13, 14 years old when all this stuff kind of happened. So there was a lot of uncertainty. There was a lot of, I would say it was turbulent. It was a very turbulent environment, a lot of unknowns, pretty chaotic. That was a great tool to put in the backpack. Having lived through that experience, I graduated university also in South Africa, and then I traveled around a little bit, and then I ended up in the United States. I ended up playing sports in the United States. And coming from South Africa, having seen a little bit of, and traveled a little bit, I was just blown away by the United States at that stage. I landed here in 2001, if you can believe it.
Wow.
But time flies when you're having fun. The one thing that impressed me so much about the United States was the incredible opportunity for upward mobility. I don't think Americans understand that. They take it for granted. A lot of stuff here in the United States, they take for granted. And that struck me like a brick right there on the head. I'm like, wow. So you can literally come from anywhere, any background, and like just build your dream here. And the only thing holding yourself back is you. That's kind of insane, because as most international people would know, if you travel around the world, it isn't that way in other countries.
Right.
Usually where you start is there's a very high probability that's where you end up. Just because of how society is structured, and every continent, every country is different. But in the United States, it's like, hey, bring your talents, bring your ideas, bring your game, bring your work ethic, and you could do whatever you want here. And that is why you look at the self-made millionaires and billionaires in this country. I mean, you have people coming, we could throw around so many names, but literally growing up in poverty, and they become billionaires. Yes. It's not a bad place to be in if this is what you can achieve here, right? Not bad. Everybody's got problems, right? But
that's right.
That's not a bad thing. So yeah, that really blew me away. So while I was playing sports and traveling and playing in a sports league here at that time, a rugby league, I had a background in history and economics, and I loved reading and studying and learning. And I'm also a very big critical thinker. And then I came across my mom actually gave me a book while I was playing in that league to read on the road, and it was Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki.
Yes.
And it just completely blew me away. It's a purple book moment that I call or refer to. And in it just opened an incredible world of opportunity. And number one, I'm blown away about being in the States and seeing what's going on here. And then number two, you have that book, and it's like, hey, not only are you in a different environment that provides endless opportunities, here's a different paradigm to adapt to. And I finished the book. I took action. I bought my first property within 6 months. After reading that book, I put some tenants in there, some renters. They paid rent, collected the rent, paid all the bills associated with it. And at the end of the month, there was money left over. And I looked at this and I'm like, are you kidding me? Just like in the book? This is incredible.
It works.
And then I said, how many times can I do this? Like you do, how many times can I do this? Because if I have this and this produces, cash flow, how many of these places can I buy? I started in single family, and this is what I would want to share with folks. And what I realized is, and this is, you mentioned Dan Sullivan, The Who Not How is a fantastic book. But what I started to realize was, and this was through, my journey in real estate. I had one stage at a broker's license. I was working for a friend while I was playing sports because I was unemployable, right? Yeah, somebody's going to hire you and you travel all the time and play sports all the time. So I had a friend that came from a family. They owned a ton of multi-family real estate. We became really good friends. And he's like, listen, if you are looking for something to do, come and work for us. You file in when you're here, when you're gone, it's fine. So I literally started picking up trash on their properties for them. That's where I started,
wow.
In multi-family.
Wow.
So talk about starting right at the bottom. And again, immigrant mentality, opportunity.
Yes.
So
right.
I figured, I'm going to start. Absolutely. I started right at the bottom, picking up trash. Eventually, I was like part of like maintenance. I was turning over apartments. I eventually managed over 1,000 units for him. I had my broker's license. I was part of an acquisitions team doing all this kind of while I was playing sports. And I'll never forget the one time there was this one real estate investor had a huge portfolio of multifamily properties that he wanted to sell. And I was cold calling and going after this specific investor. And then one day I got in early in the office and he just left. My friend, who was his partner, he owned the real estate brokerage. They had a bunch of companies just like you guys, the brokerage and management and all this kind of stuff. I'm like, what just happened? Like, there has to be a lesson here because this is pretty brutal of like me chasing this person and not getting there. Well, these people, my friends, they were cash flow ninjas in that area. They basically, nothing moved on that specific side in the north side of Chicago in real estate, multifamily real estate and commercial real estate without those guys knowing. And everybody knew them. They had it all wrapped up. If somebody was selling, they would go to them. They would either buy it cash, close it, and add that to their portfolio, or they already had a buyer for it. And they would just wholesale it to someone else. And then I started to look at this and I said, this is ridiculous. How do these people are cash flow ninjas. I realized that, hey, why don't I invest? I can invest with the best operators in the best deals in the best markets. And in some projects, I can be a general partner if I add value and I bring something to the table besides capital, right? I can work in the deal. Or I could just be a limited partner and invest that way. And I looked at that and I'm like, this is how I can build out a diversified portfolio in alternative investments. I don't have to be the guy. I can just be the person managing my own stuff and diversifying it, spreading it with different operators in the best investments in the best markets. So that's what I continue to do. I built my business, Producers Wealth, and that turned into, I never could have thought it turned into what it turned into. Like 180 countries, millions of downloads. It's turned kind of into an educational company with books and educational courses and all that kind of stuff and mastermind. So what I then ended up doing was the blueprint of like generating capital in these businesses and then investing it into something that pays me to hold it, reduces my taxes, and appreciates over time. And I just kept rolling that snowball.
Nothing on this show should be considered specific, personal, or professional advice. Please consult an appropriate tax, legal, real estate, financial, or business professional for individualized advice. Opinions and information on the show are not guaranteed. All investment strategies have the potential for profit or loss.